Hello, everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today we're doing a box office preview for this upcoming weekend, which sees the brand new release of Flight Risk from Lionsgate, which unfortunately means the film probably is doomed to not do very well, even though this film is a brand new movie from Mel Gibson and Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch himself being the starring role of the movie. And apparently he's actually giving a pretty good performance in this film, doing pretty much everything to act against his typical character, against the typical parts he usually plays, and to pretty good effect. And so I've been hearing some pretty interesting things about it. Overall, mixed reactions to the movie, but it is a 90-minute film, which is, I think, something that we so desperately want and desire in this world, is shorter movies, and apparently also a very fun, fast-paced action film. And so it's a movie that's definitely on my radar of movies that I would actually really like to see. But of course, that does not necessarily mean that the box office is going to be that kind to the actual film itself. There's also a brand new film coming out from Angel Studios, Brave the Dark, which I also am interested in checking out because, as is generally true with anything from Angel Studios, sometimes they have some really good, interesting releases, and other times it is, again, just that reminder that, man, oh man, they really are trying to recapture that magic that they once had with Sound of Freedom, and I think that they're just not really finding a way to really break through in this capacity. And so we'll talk about all of these things, also some of the follow-up numbers for films like Mufasa and others like Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Before going any further, though, we have the Raven Awards. That's right, the nominations have officially been announced. If you want to check out what the nominees for this year's 7th annual Raven Awards for films coming out, or that came out in 2024, go to the website ombreviews.com and click on the Raven Awards for 2024. You get access to the live stream where we officially announced that information. You get the nominees there and also information about how you can vote, including the ballots. So please fill out your ballot today for the 7th annual Raven Awards. If you are especially tired of the Oscars nonsense, hey, this is a great alternative, and it's a lot of fun. No real stakes to it whatsoever. We just have a ball. We have a blast with it. And I think also a lot better films tend to get nominated, including films like Strange Darling, which got completely shut out by the Oscars this year, which of course is no surprise because they have long abandoned the ability to actually celebrate real cinema and to support actual films that get released and are actually popular with a lot of people in the box office. And so if they're going to be going ahead and pushing for films that push nonsense and fantasy like Amelia Perez, which is just ridiculous for so many different reasons, go ahead. If you're tired of that nonsense, vote for the Ravens instead. So let's go ahead and dive into those numbers from Box Office Theory, starting off first with Flight Risk. So the traditional box office tracking for the film is between $8 and $10 million, which is a pretty, again, standard fare for most of the Lionsgate's releases that have been going on the last couple of years, with the Box Office Theory numbers here being arranged from a lower standard of 7, but also a higher possible end result of $12 million. We're Brave the Dark right now, no expectations, and again, no surprise there from mainstream media, whereas Box Office Theory is projecting between a $3.5 and $6.5 million opening. This really comes from the fact that Angel Studios has had a pretty standard release. Again, they have a pretty standard audience demographic that shows up pretty consistently for their movies. It's not a very high number, but it could get a relatively consistent number. And so I think that we can be probably pretty confident that the 3.5 to 6.5 million is a very likely standard for the movie itself. Going into the full chart here, it is now being projected by Box Office Theory that Mufasa will actually win the number 1 spot and beat out the new release from Flight Risk. And of course, that also means the new release from Brave the Dark. Can't say I'm all that surprised by that possible prospect. This is definitely one of the lower numbers being projected, with people like Box Office Pro having a little bit of a higher, a little bit more, I guess you could say, optimistic take, with they expect a Flight Risk to make $12 to $15 million. I don't know if it's going to make exactly that much money. Then again, it is a film that, again, as I mentioned before, people are kind of hungry for. People really want a return of shorter movies. 90-minute films sound pretty nice these days. A 90-minute action thriller with people like Mark Wahlberg, with people like Mel Gibson attached, that could be enough to bring out more than your typical persons. Whether or not that's going to carry out or not, though, we'll obviously have to wait and see. But it will be interesting to see whether it reaches the heights of Box Office Pro is projecting, or if it does not. Again, Box Office Theory is typically pretty good on these things. Box Office Report also would agree with them projecting Flight Risk to take the number 1 spot at $9.8 million, but Mufasa to be very close behind at $9.4 million as well. So again, it'll be an interesting battle between these two movies. The more impressive, of course, though, being Mufasa, because it's been out for 6 weeks and it's still in the top spots, or in one of the top 2 spots at the box office. And this is, again, just a movie doing much better than I think anyone would have anticipated. It's still not made its money back, still not profitable, but it is definitely getting very close to that point, and I think has a chance of being able to even reach that point. Even so, it is not going to be good news for Disney, because it's talking about a marginal success, meaning that you're going to barely break even or barely make a little bit of profit on a massive budget like that after your first film, your first, quote, live action adaptation with your photorealistic CGI effects, making almost $2 billion. Yeah, I'm sorry, like there's just no comparison between those two movies. This is a complete utter failure in comparison to that first movie, and you want to make a lot more money on this one, and that is just not happening. Again, kudos to them for doing better than expected and doing better down the line, having those legs, but yeah, still not great. Not great for Flight Risk either. Again, I think the curse of Lionsgate continues on. Marketing, I don't think, has been too effective for this movie. All I can take away from the trailer is, wow, that's an interesting bald cap choice for Flight Risk. But it sounds like they're embracing it. Apparently, some fan event screenings or some early screenings at Cinemark, I think, were actually giving out bald caps to people who were going. To me, that's brilliant. So, hey, if they could maybe expand that out to some other theater chains, that'd be a reason for me to want to go, even though I don't need necessarily a bald cap. It would still be fun to go to a movie and get one. I don't know. We're in the age and the era of the popcorn bucket. So, again, things like this sometimes are enough to get people out there to the theater. So, going over to Box Office Theory once again, though, $8.8 million projected for Flight Risk. One of them days. This is a film that did a lot better than expected last weekend, dropping 44%. That's a pretty decent hold for a movie like that from TriStar and Sony. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 dropping 33% to $5.8 million. This is, again, going to continue that trend, though, of Mufasa expected to do a lot better than Sonic. So these are two films that came out around the same time. Mufasa has been kind of eating the lunch of Sonic in these daily performances. Yes, Sonic had a much stronger advantage, making over $30 extra million in its domestic opening. But remember, Sonic also made a lot less than what was anticipated in its domestic opening. It was tracking towards 70, 80, 90 million, maybe upwards of $100 million in domestic, and only ended up making around 60 million, which is actually on the low end of what many of the projections were. The film is still profitable, is still making money. It's going to make a decent amount of money by the end of its box office run. It is also still making money internationally. It's just not going to be the huge release I think some people were expecting it to be. It's going to be the biggest of the franchise so far, but not by as much as you would kind of hope for in a film franchise like this. So again, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 likely will still end with a less total worldwide number than Mufasa. I think that's pretty easy to say. That's a 100% guarantee at this point. But also domestically, there's a really good chance Mufasa is able to finally catch up to and surpass that of Sonic. Right now, the projections for Box Office Theory has it where they're going to reduce the spread between the two films, 221 million being projected for Mufasa, 227 for Sonic. So again, a $6 million difference at this point. It started off with a $30 million difference. It's now gone down to 6. So do not be surprised that by the end of the run, Mufasa could easily end up taking that domestic crown. Going back over to Box Office Pro, because they only have their top 3 movies there. Flight Risk is the number 1 film. Mufasa, the number 2 at $5 to $7 million. Again, interesting to see who's going to be correct on those projections between them and Box Office Theory. And then one of them days, they also project to have $5 to $7 million. They actually have a wild card. I've never seen this from Box Office Pro before. But they think the new film Presence, which I believe is a new Steven Soderbergh film. Soderbergh always makes very interesting films. Just the fact that he is even attached to it makes me kind of want to see it. It is, again, kind of a ghost... I don't know if it's necessarily a possession movie, but ghost, you could, I guess you could say, very much otherworldly kind of stuff, which occult stuff. So I try to usually stay away from movies like that. But Soderbergh's name attached to it makes me kind of more interested in it. Right now, projected range from Neon, right, the distributor on this movie, $4 to $6 million there. So hey, Presence could end up maybe getting some good word of mouth potentially, and hey, could be a factor there. Going over to Box Office Reports, looking at these films, right, one of them days being at 7.7, Sonic being at 6.4, again, still a massive spread between these two movies, but a stronger hold projected from Box Office Reports, with the number 5 film being Moana 2, and this is, again, another, I think, a factor here, where Moana 2 is not too far off, 9 weeks removed from its release from that of Sonic, and so you could also potentially see before the end of these films' run, runs, and Moana 2 is very much reaching very close to the end of its run, at least domestically at the box office, right, with, physical media releases and Disney Plus releases probably being very imminent at this point. Yeah, you're talking about, again, just how poor down the line Sonic is doing in comparison to what many people had expected it to do. All of this is, again, talking about what expectations were, not about how the film is objectively bad or how the film is objectively failing. That's not the case whatsoever. It's more of from where it was starting, the projections were a lot better, were a lot higher for the movie, and it's really just not reaching those same limits in that way. And if Moana 2 is able to even be close to the weekend performance, 3 weeks removed from the initial release of Sonic the Hedgehog 3, again, that speaks probably less to Sonic 3 and not as much to Moana 2, right? It again is speaking more so to how Sonic 3 is just not holding as well down the line, not necessarily how well Moana 2 is doing, though we have to point out the fact Moana 2 is doing well, especially when you look at the overall box office numbers and compare it to its budgets, etc. Wolfman dropping 63% projected here, so Wolfman not doing very well in this regards. Only 3.8 million projected for the film Presence. Doesn't makes pretty much similar sense there in comparison to what we saw projected over on Box Office Pro. The Brutalist, which got a lot of nominations at a very irrelevant award show this year, not really a lot of attention at all at this year's Raven Awards. 6 weeks from initial release, going to increase 61%. This typically happens. There's usually an awards season bump. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. Wicked, Brave the Dark, only expected to get $2.6 million there. And Nosferatu dropping off quite a bit at this point, but as I mentioned in previous videos, on path to make a decent amount of profit. Again, for a Robert Eggers movie, that is definitely a very good thing. Finishing off box office theories coverage here, again, for them, Brave the Dark, they expect $5 million for this movie. So a little bit on the higher end, I guess, in the overall projections for that film's, just again, the actual pinpoint forecasting there. Wolfman dropping 59%, so pretty, consistent there as well. Moana 2 at $4.2 million. So again, a pretty big spread between those movies, but not too close, rather not too far away even from that of Sonic 3. Den of Thieves 2 holding, I guess you could say, okay, but really not doing a whole lot of much of anything. Complete Unknown not having as nearly as much of a jump as one would expect after some of the Oscars nominations there. But let's go over to the charts. People who love charts here on OMB Reviews to see what the current numbers are. These are from Box Office Pro, and sometimes the chart does not always update in real time, so take sometimes these numbers with a grain of salt. But as of right now, one of them days, $16.1 million, $12 million in the red. Wolfman, $18.7 million, currently $27 million in the red, with a drop as is being expected for this movie. Do not expect this film to make its money back anytime soon. Den of Thieves 2, also same thing. Again, $41 million in the red, probably not going to make that money back. Baby Girl, still not making its money back. Fire Inside, likely not doing it either. Nosferatu, officially profitable as of last weekend, $1.4 million in net gain profits at this point in time. Complete Unknown, still a flop. And again, maybe that awards bump will help it a little bit. I still think it's too much money to make back, so that film will not end up making its money back. So, man, how far, Mangold has fallen in many different respects. Sonic the Hedgehog 3, as I had mentioned, has finally now crossed the profitability territory, has more than doubled its first 2 weeks, much thanks to a delayed international release. But $423 million makes this film on track to, again, end probably close to probably closer to $500 million at this point, though I think after its initial opening, it could have done and probably should have done a little bit better. So still a very niche property there, building on its audience, which is a very, very good thing. But I just think that there's so much untapped potential that's just not being tapped in this franchise, and I think it's because of some of the decisions that they're making and how they are appealing to certain audiences. Again, I think that this is a franchise that I think should be a billion-dollar franchise, and it's just not there, and I don't think it's going to actually get there because, again, they're increasing their money, but I don't think they're increasing their audience by all that much, especially when you take into account changing ticket prices and things of that nature. So it's doing well, it's making its money back, $19 million in profit, it's good, and it's going to end between $50 and $100 million of net profit by the end, which is good, but also not the best that we have seen, not as good as, for instance, a film like Moana 2's net profit concerns. $601 million from Mufasa, $30 million in the red. As I said before, this film's almost doubled after its first 2 weeks, so definitely doing much better down the road. And again, did not have the same type of delayed release in different countries in the same way that Sonic did, where it was like a full week removed from its initial international releases there. So this is a movie that, again, has a chance to break even, but even then, it's still not going to be a good sign for them because it's still far removed from the 2019 box office for The Lion King. tanking and also still not really making up for how much money they put into it. War of the Rohirrim still a flop. Kraven the Hunter still a flop. Y2K flop. Werewolves still a flop as well. And then Moana 2, right? Comfortably over $1 billion there, still making money. So we're talking about the film probably, ending its run around what? $1.05 billion. Maybe you could say like a long-term goal, like a kind of like a total peak of 1.1 billion maybe. I don't think it's going to have that much gas in the tank, but still more than enough to make $1 billion, more than enough to make over 200 million in profits based off the numbers that we have in front of us, and overall a success. Also, same thing with Wicked, $710 million. This film is definitely tracking towards ending, at least around $750 million probably by the end of it, or at least, a little bit between 710 and 750 million, 53 million in profits. So a huge win for them, more than doubling its total take. So again, huge win, chart-breaking numbers here from Wicked and from Moana 2. Don't know why people were not seeing that earlier on, because the numbers were pretty clear at that point, but those are the numbers. Right now we have no actual reported budget for Flight Risk. I've seen some reports of 15 million, some reports of up to 40 million. Either way though, whether it's 15 or 40, it's not likely to make its money back based on the numbers that we are seeing in front of us. But hey, things could change if good word of mouth goes around. Right now, though, the reviews are pretty mixed. Over on Critic List, only 2 reviews have been posted. One was a decent score. The other was a rad score. Again, that sounds like that's probably going to be what most likely these films are going to end up being reported as. And so those are the numbers as they stand. What are y'all's thoughts? Do you think that Flight Risk is going to be any good? Are you planning to see it? Have you seen it? If so, what are your thoughts about it? Let me know in the comment section down below. And also Mufasa. Do you think Mufasa is going to be able to surpass that of Sonic 3's domestic box office? As of right now, it seems like that is very likely the case. If we just go to the daily charts here, because again, seeing the trends is very important. As of Wednesday, Mufasa was still beating out Sonic, right? $717,000. So we're seeing films drop, very much below $1 million a day, which is usually the sign of the end. But we obviously live in a very different age of the box office here. On the Discount Tuesday, Mufasa got the number two spot against One of Them Days. Again, One of Them Days doing a lot better than I think anyone could have anticipated, but that is still a pretty good advantage against Sonic. So whereas it's not making huge advances, right? It's about $1 million difference in a daily number, like a Monday number, for instance. We're not seeing any, $1 million differences in the other daily performances, but in the weekend performances, we are seeing that chasm between them growing. And that's why I do think you're going to see Mufasa probably be able to catch up to and surpass the total domestic box office. And so Mufasa winning against Sonic, even though Sonic won the first opening battle, the war, it looks like will be won by Mufasa. Let me know your thoughts about that as well in the comment section down below. Also, make sure you vote in the Raven Awards if you haven't done so already. Again, ombreviews.com if you want to get more information about that. The form is right here. Click on that, fill out your ballot, and see who wins on March 2nd when we go up against and boycott the Oscars like we always do, because it's just a fun show. It's a fun show that doesn't have the woke identity politic nonsense that is oftentimes present in those shows. And so those are the numbers as they stand. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, apply that fire button if you can over on Odyssey. If it ever starts to, post over there automatically again, smash the rumble button as well. You guys are all amazing, and have a wonderful rest of your day. A blessed Friday. See many of you later on Friday Night Tights. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my Chosen of Valhalla members, starting off first with my people on Patreon, Father Luca Illick and Miss Martin Muses. Check out her YouTube channel by the same name, Miss Martin Muses. Also to my Subscribe Star people, Matt317. Check out his Twitch channel by the same name, Matt317. And also to the K-Man. Check out his website, xtheboundaries.co. And lastly to my YouTube member, Mr. Roy, shout out to you, good sir. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, check out the top link in the video description below where you get access to that. Also, you get access to a plethora of other things. You get your name listed at the end of every live stream and video, like you saw in those names that came up before this video started, and also access to a giveaways channel that I host over on the Discord server where I give away 4Ks, Steelbooks, Blu-rays, all kinds of stuff. So check that out if you're interested in that. Also, I have an exclusive podcast that I hold at least once a month, and it's always a good time, and you get extra bonus content with that also. So if any of that sounds interesting, again, check out that top link in the video description below. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.